All right, class, let's go ahead and answer our questions this week. First one, Julia.
Okay. Hello. Okay, so I don't have any questions about the softwares. I'm just wondering if you have tips or tricks to keep up with this summer course because I'm falling behind. So I know I'm going to make it, but I'm just wondering if you have any tips that you've experienced. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this class it's not an easy class to take in the summertime because it's project based. All of the assignments are pretty much projects, minus these participation grades. And so the biggest thing I can tell you to do is just maybe watch a video one day, take notes, and do the project the next day, or just a little bit at a time. Maybe work on it an hour and a half each day, like split it up between 2 days. But however you work best, like it's just you have to continuously be working on these projects. Like this is a summer class, and when you take summer classes, you expect to work during the summer. So, uh, it's just putting in the work and actually getting the assignments done, because if you don't, then you're just going to keep falling further and further behind, because the assignments are taking what you're learning in the first bit of the course and adding to it. So each project is going to get more complex as we go further and further into class. And so just really, spending time each day until you get the assignments done is really what you need to do. And if it's not something that you feel like you can do, you can always take the course at a later time, and you can let me know and you guys can withdraw this for everyone. That's not just aimed at you, Julia, because you're not the only one struggling to get the work done in class. So, um, and utilizing the tutoring or asking me questions when you have them right away. I try and answer them as quickly as possible. So, that's just kind of my advice for that. All right, let me see here. This is Darren.
Uh, so I will say that everything went pretty decent this week. Although I would have liked to have completed more work, I did end up completing the ball project finally. It did come out pretty wonky though. So I just wanted to see if there was a way that I could prevent that in the future. See this an example here. Some of these balls, like
Yeah, let me address that for you, Darren. That's a good. I'm happy you asked that question right now. So specifically, let's address each one from left to right. Okay.
a way
Um.
that I could prevent
So your bounce
that.
is good for all of mostly. There's some improvements which I wrote in the rubric comments and stuff for you to change on these, but the biggest thing is the disappearing and the ghosting and the like duplication of the compositions. So here it looks like to me that your compositions aren't back to back. What do I mean by that? So I have this project set up here, and let's say that I wanted to bring in, let me create a new comp. Oh, tis a folder, not a composition. Let me create a new comp and we'll name it example. There we go. And let's say I had multiple animations and I really wanted to put them all together in one scene so I could export one MP4, right? And it's supposed to be looping, right? You're supposed to have 3 bounces or something. Let's say that each of these bounces, uh, or let me see here. Let's say we want this weight comp to repeat, right? Let's say we wanted it to do multiple sections. Like I request 3 bounces usually for the balls, right? So let's say that it stopped here. What I would do is I would shorten this composition like this. You can either drag it like that, or what you can do is you can, if I do that, if you hit Alt and closed, open or close square bracket, it will trim the comp for you. And I'm going to actually zoom in here so I can see the minute detail of where this is ending, right? Let's say I wanted to bring it to the 4th frame of the second. And then I want it to play again. What I would do is I would duplicate this, Control D, and I would drag this comp over, right to there. So one, the other, like it's like an on-off, 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 right? You have to make sure that they're exactly butted up to each other. What's happening in your first one is it looks like there's space in between, which will cause blank frames, right? You'll go there, it'll be a blank frame, and then it goes back, right? So it's going to flash, which you don't want. And then what it looks like on your After Effects ball right there, what's happening is it's overlapping. So your comp's like this, and so it's adding additional it's adding the additional ball on there, and that's what's making it look like a duplicate. And so like this whole course, like the biggest thing I can tell you guys to do is be very, very mindful of detail and keeping that detail in mind when you're doing these types of things, because you're actually not the only person that struggled with that. A lot of students struggle with making sure that the compositions line up back to back when sequencing things.
A
And
way that I can.
so it's something that you guys all need to pay attention to before submitting videos. I also really recommend watching your videos before you submit them.
Prevent that in the future. See this an example here. Some of these balls, like the timing is just kind of screwed up. So yeah, I would say that's the main thing really. But I was able to get the typography stuff going, and that's been going pretty good so far. Any issues that I have had, I've been able to walk through the video again and clear up on my own. So yeah, thank you.
All right, Chance.
Questions this time around. I just decided I'll use this participation assignment here to show something I've been working on. Maybe get some feedback on it. So I've been modeling this character, just got done with the rigging. There's still some little details I need to take care of, but yeah, for example, I can move the arm around, I can bend his forearm. That's not how it would bend, but I can move this up. I have I don't know if they're drivers per se. They're not drivers, but little bone constraints that allow me to bend the finger using this one bone. So a bunch of little things like that. I'm still having some trouble with the hands, so if I try to turn it into a fist, like if I move these in, and then hope this works. It's kind of finicky. That didn't work. Let me try this again, going in from here. Yeah, something like that. And for sanity's sake, I'm just going to avoid his thumb for now. Yeah, I can get it into a little bit of a fist here. It looks a little bit weird, but I think it works okay for now.
I would think that it works okay.
There might be a few little stylistic changes to do here, but yeah, I just wanted to show this.
Yeah, good job on that. Actually, we're going to be doing next week's assignment is going to be about rigging, and we're going to be doing a robot arm inside of After Effects. I like seeing that you have most of your experience seems to be in 3D, which is awesome. So you'll have an easier time when we do the EveBot as well. But the rigging in the EveBot is not as complex as this. We don't do really rigging for characters in this because we have a lot of students who are beginners and who need to learn the basics a little bit more. And so we work with a little bit more of a simplistic version of like a robot and simpler rigging where we don't use a frame or a bone structure in the one that we're doing. That's more complex. That takes a little bit more time with the armatures and stuff, but this is something that will be learned in other classes. But no, yours, it looks good. The mesh mapping looks really nice as well on that. Maybe that's where you would make adjustments to in case you wanted to change the way that fists look. But I thought it was an acceptable look to a fist, right? Especially because it's like it's not realistic. It's a cartoonish type of model. But yeah, cool job. All right, Edward.
So just going through some of these, I didn't have any
Oh
problems
gosh,
with
Edward, 11 minutes. I am going to
the
watch
software.
this
Actually, I was able to get.
and answer this separately for you because this is a very long. You guys, I just need them to be like 5 minutes long, right? You don't have to answer every question on the thing, um, but just answering uh, maybe at least one, maybe two of the questions on there, or asking your own question. But 11 minutes is just way too long because I have to play this for the rest of the class. So I'll watch this, Edward, and I will send you the answer separately, okay? All right, Melanie.
Hello, Professor Amanda. For this week, my only question is about whether my bounce on my light ball looks a bit weird. When I press go, and this is like my end product, I feel like my ball just bounces right out of the screen than it should be. And I followed pretty much everything from the video, but for some reason I just can't seem
Yeah, Melanie, I think that
to fix it.
the bounce here, you have overshoot happening. What is overshoot? So overshooting is when, let's go ahead and see if I can show you in here. Perfect. Let me zoom in. Let me make this bigger actually so I can highlight this and show you. So overshooting occurs when, let me see if I can get it closer here. When the curve goes above the peak of the motion on the curve, right? So the position, this is obviously, or I'm sorry, this is a rotational change. And if I wanted it to overshoot, what I would do, which I have a little bit going on here, is I would bring this Bezier curve up. And notice how it's going above the position, or I'm sorry, the rotation that's initially there. And so when it goes above, that means it's going to go beyond what the rotational point is that we set it at, right? Because this rotational point is set at 30 negative or 34 degrees, probably 35. If I were to look, no, it's 34. So there it's 34 degrees, but here it's going to go above that 34 degrees to about, I don't know, let me see, what is this? 35.2, right? And so it's overshooting above what I have it set at. And that's going to cause this motion that you have on this ball in particular.
I was hoping you could give me some advice
Right there, where it continues to move after.
on that. Okay, thank you.
Right there, like that kind of wobbly up and down. That's overshoot that's happening on the ball.
Yeah.
And then on this ball, let's see, let's play that again. I'm not sure.
Hello, Professor Amanda. For this week, my only question is about whether my bounce on my light ball looks a bit weird. When I press go, and this is like
look odd too, and I think it's probably because of the shape of your curves. So if I were, that's the weight. Let me see here. Notice how this just is like boom, 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 boom. Like it's actually hitting a floor, right? That's how you want it to look. So if I were to grab my lightweight keyframes here and I were to go into the graph editor, this is what your graph should be appearing to look like, right? Upside down bounce. It's going to start up higher and each bounce is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter, and it would be continuing to, like, if this bounce were to continue until it was a complete stop, it would go shorter and then shorter and then shorter. Each bounce would be not as high as the first one, right? And then you want to make sure that all of them are coming to the same exact stopping point. So in this case, the stop happens to be right around, let me see here. I have moved this over. Just bring that over here. 800 is the position point at which each one of these balls stops. So if I go to the next bottom of the bounce, it's always 800. So you want to make sure that the bottom part where it's hitting on the floor, right? Because look at its floor up now. You want to make sure it's always in the same exact position value. If not, you're going to get that kind of weird bouncing that's looking. And it's also kind of moving all at once. It never actually stops and bounces up. So you want to make sure that the curves are looking like upside down bounces, where there's just going to be this hard point where it changes direction. And it's not like a smooth change in direction. And so you're going to want to check your curves on that to see if they're correct and they look like this. All right. Let me see. Ryan.
Hi. So, my main question this week, I guess, and I don't know if I kind of have the answer, is when, so with the After Effects project, we drew in the ellipses and, not the ellipses, the circles.
Okay, you said it right.
And, when you do that in After Effects, you can transform the properties that are on the layer, and then you can also transform the properties that are also on the circle itself. And so I guess, how do you know when to do what? I know we were chatting earlier in the week, and I was having an issue with the easing for one of them, and you had helped me sort it out with separating the dimensions. And what I had figured out I had done was I was at first transforming everything on the layer, and then I thought that was incorrect, so I went in and transformed the ellipses itself. Not the ellipses, I don't know why I keep saying that, the circle. So I guess, is it when we do something like the squash and stretch project, and that's when we would transform the actual circle itself and the properties of the circle? Or, I mean, is it that we could transform the circle and do that, and it would be the same, and I just did it incorrectly?
No, so there's let me finish your question before I start to answer it. But you're thinking correctly about it, right? And there are different times when you want to use different things. Let's play and hear what you have to say the rest of it, and then I'll answer everything.
Like I said, I'm not sure if that's why the easing wasn't working originally, and that, had messed it up, because when I had redone, when you had talked to me, I had deleted one of the keyframes for one of the circles, and I had done it on the other layer, and I kind of immediately noticed that worked. So I just wasn't sure if there was kind of like an easy way to tell when you should do that, if it does relate to more of like the squash and stretch, and when you're messing more with the the properties of the circle itself to like stretch it, and that's really it, because I noticed you could also just move the position of the circle. So, what's the difference between doing that on the actual circle property and the layer? Because I guess I don't really understand what the difference is. I guess my thought process would be because you draw the circle on the layer, that it would all be one. So what is the difference between animating the circle position and then the layer position when you have it that way? Because I noticed, they were different, and I seem to be struggling with that, so I didn't know if they do different things. I seem to understand Cinema 4D a little more than After Effects. After Effects still kind of confuses me with some of the properties like that. So I do plan to attend tutoring tomorrow, and I am going to ask Belle about it a little bit, just to see, if she answers me as well. I think my only other question was, when I am doing the blur effects, specifically on the squash project, or not the blur, the echo, it seems to make almost a shadow. My dad and I were looking at it, and the echo is darker than the original color on mine, and I'm not sure if that's a setting I have that's not changed. Because I just follow everything in the video, so I'm not sure if there's something I'm missing because I follow the steps. But it seems to look, my dad at first thought it was a shadow when I showed him the video.
Okay, so let's address a couple of these questions that you have. So the first one is, what Ryan is discussing is when to use the regular transform properties. Let me get this so you guys can see. Like hitting T for opacity, P for position, S for scale. Those are regular transform properties. Let me just break this down so you can see. You guys initially draw a shape into your scene, and this shape layer shows up. And when you unfurl the first menu, you get the transform options to use, right? These are basic transform properties that you can animate. Mostly this is what people end up using to animate, right? Most common animations that are done use these properties in some sort of way. But what Ryan is talking about is that when you drop down the context and you go to the ellipse, and you have these different types of transform properties, right? Well, there's the ellipse path, which you can open, and you can change the size. Like, what is the difference between the size and the scale, or the position? And also dropping down, and then you notice that there's more transform properties of this. Now, I always start with the basic transform properties. Whenever I'm going to animate, I generally use these initially for any kind of motion that's going to happen. And then I will possibly use these ones if that motion starts to become a more complex thing that I'm going to use. Also, let's say that you had multiple shapes on one layer. Let's say we had, let me just do this, grab this. Let's say on the same lightweight ball right there, I'm going to just kind of shut these off so you guys can see. I'm going to draw another layer that is going to have a rectangle. And I realize I've gotten so far, I wanted to have all the same effects, but I want this rectangle to do something different. And so it's because the transform properties here are the transform properties of the actual layer itself. Let's say that I wanted this to also, I don't know, rotate, right? But just only the square and not the circle. So I would go into the rectangle specifically and select the rotation of the rectangle and keyframe that, and then move forward, and when it hits, we'll do like a 90-degree rotation. And so then I've got not only the ball, or not only does a square have the transform properties of the layer that's happening, but then I can add more complex animations to just the square itself. And so it gives you a little bit more power doing this, right? And then animating specific path properties are more for when you want to get like an organic look or change the shape of something, i.e. for morphing later on. That's something that you can do changes to the paths. And you notice that when you do the squash and stretch here. Let me do this. Yeah, that's fine. Noticing that this one looks a lot more fluid, and this is path animation versus just transform property animation, right? This one obviously looks a lot more goopy. It gives it more of like a cartoony look, more of a natural organic look, where this one looks a little bit more rigid and robotic. And that's because I opened up the path properties and animated those and changed it almost like a frame by frame option, right? And so you're thinking along the same paths, along the path that you need to be thinking when starting to combine different transform properties together, like on a single layer, right? So, good question, because I haven't had a student ask that question yet. Now, the echo effect that you are coming into, let me just make this full fit. Let me see here. If I throw in a background, let's just throw in the background here. We'll make this, I don't know, let's pick this color, go up a bit, make it darker. This is going to be an ugly color. This is not color. Whatever. And so the echo effect is applied to each of these balls. Let me go to the effects and presets panel, which just happens to be closed on mine for some reason. If that ever happens, you guys, you're like, where did my panel go? What you do is just open your window tab there. Window tab. And then you'll go down. This section right here are like the basics of what After Effects starts you at. So possibly what's happening here for you, Ryan, is that you don't have it put to composite in the back. It could be under add. It could be, you said it was looking darker like a shadow. It's probably, we don't want it to composite in the front. We don't want it to blend. We want it to composite in the back. You have to make sure you have that there. Also, sometimes the decay, maybe your decay is off on there. I'm not quite sure. I would like to see what you're talking about when you say that it looks like a shadow. Because I'm not getting that for this specifically. And I would like, if you want to, all you have to do is screenshot your After Effects project with this here, screenshot it with, so I can see what your settings are on here. Because I'm curious about that too. And then I want to see also what that looks like. Let's see, cancel that. I want to see what your scene looks like at the same time, so I can see what you mean if you want to point that out to me. But good questions this week on that. All right, let's go to Kong.
So hi class. So my question for this week is the comp layers. What does the collapse transformation vector layer continuous whatever that word, what does that do, in After Effects?
That's a good question, Kong. So that is it's meant for vector layers. What are vector layers, right? Those are Illustrator files that you bring in, or any kind of files from a vector based program and not a raster based. Illustrator is vector based, Photoshop is raster based, right? And so when you bring one of those into a composition, it you need to tell the computer that it is a vector. And so what this does is it continuously makes sure that that's sharp. You need to have that marked on if you bring in specifically an Illustrator file. Whenever you create a shape inside of After Effects, it's automatically a vector shape. But when you bring in, let's see if we can bring in an Illustrator file here. Oh, where am I at? Let's do that. This. I think with this one. Cool. I'll do this. Importing as a composition. Let's retain those layer sizes. Let's import it. If I go into here and I bring this into my layer, let's do a different part of that butterfly so that you guys can actually see it. There you go. Cool, looks good and stuff, but as soon as I start zooming in, you see that it's like rasterized right there, which is an issue because this is a vector-based layer. It should be a vector. So as soon as I click on this, it should automatically make sure that that is actually sharp. And let me tell you something here real quick. This doesn't look sharp like that because I'm actually zoomed in. Let me redo this for you so you guys can see what I'm talking about. All right. Let's say this where maybe the antenna would be good for this. We're going to go to normal. So if you guys are zooming in a bunch on your screen, everything's going to look kind of pixelated because you're zooming in on the screen. It doesn't have to do with what your layers are. It has to do more with what your screen setting is. It's like taking a microscope to your video, right? But let's make this big. Here we go. This is the example. So I have this antenna of the butterfly. I made it big, but it looks blurry, and that shouldn't be happening because it is a vector layer. Now, what is a vector layer? It is a shape or some kind of thing that you create, right? That is continuously, it's based off of mathematics and not off of pixels. And so what it does is if you start to scale that, the mathematics will just increase so that it looks sharp at no matter what size. So the best way to describe this is if you made a logo, right? And you wanted to put that logo not only on something small like a business card, but then you also are like, but maybe at some point my business is going to get big and I want to put my logo on like a billboard, right? You would never want to do a Photoshop or a raster based logo. You would always want to create a vector based logo because a vector logo can be scaled to whatever size and be sharp. But you notice that I scaled this up to 600%. It should be sharp. Well, as soon as I hit this, the continuously raster, it will sharpen that up for me. But then if I go in here and just zoom into my layer a ton, let's see, like 400%, it's still going to look like that because, again, that's like I'm saying, like I'm microscopically like zooming into the frame, and it has nothing to do with the actual vector shape itself. And so whenever you bring in these Illustrator files with these separate layers, you always want to click that rasterize or vector, the vector thing right here. The name is kind of confusing. The like continuously, it means to like just take into account like all of the mathematics that are involved with it, with that vector shape. But great question there. All right, Marsal.
All right, so for Animate, when we export it as the multiple PNGs, does it always have to be the 24 frames or the 24 PNGs? Is there a way to import it just is it like its own thing, or does it have to go through After Effects and all of that?
So Marisol, we actually looked into this was something I spoke with someone else about, who was having issues rendering out their animate file and with the background, right? They didn't want to see the background. And so if I open up Adobe Animate, there is a couple different options. You should be bringing it in. The reason we have you bring it into After Effects is because we were creating other bounces alongside of it, and we wanted to make sure it was in the same video as the other files. If it were just a standalone animation from Adobe Animate, you don't have to bring that into After Effects, right? You can just render it out and it'd be all ready. But because we had animations from both Adobe Animate, After Effects, and Cinema 4D, we use After Effects, which is a compositing program, right, to composite all of those things together. And so, therefore, that's why you either bring the Animate file into Adobe After Effects itself, like the entire file, or what you can do is if we created a new, let's open this one right here. Will you open? Here we go. Perfect. We can render it out as like a separate video, right? And so what we would do is you go to File, Export, and we're going to actually export video media. And so I'm going to click on that. And when we're exporting this, right, we don't have to do a PNG sequence anymore. We actually have the option to export it as like a video. You want to make sure you ignore the stage color, and that's going to generate the alpha channel, which means it's going to take the background out because we don't want this white background to be exported at the same time. And then you want the entire video, and you want to make sure that the codec is H.264. That is what is going to make sure that what you're creating is an MP4 file. And then you're going to pick where you want that to live, and then you will go ahead and hit export. And then you can bring that video into After Effects if you want to. You don't have to. You can just, if everything was only supposed to be done inside of Animate, then there you go. You have your entire video there. If you needed to add effects and stuff, which a lot of companies will still do, you can bring it into After Effects and then start adding layers on top of it, right? So the possibilities with this can get very complex. I'm sorry, my brain just went blank for a second. But good question there. All right, David.
Hello everyone, just a quick question about importing models into Cinema 4D from like iMesh or Polygon. I do that, and then for some reason it doesn't bring the textures in with it, and then I try and link them back to the texture file and it never works. So if anybody has any tips or tricks on that, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, David, let me hear that. For some reason my audio cut out. I don't know if it did it for you guys too. Let me just
Hello everyone, just a quick question about importing models into Cinema 4D from like iMesh or Polygon. I do that, and then for some reason it doesn't bring the textures in with it, and then I try and link them back to the texture file and it never works. So if anybody has any tips or tricks on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Let me look that one up for you, David, because I'm not quite sure why that's happening either. And then I can get back to you on that one. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. Let me see. Why won't my materials import into C4D? Here we go.
Okay, before I start the tutorial,
This might be a good one to watch. I'll copy that link and share that one with you, David, inside of Slack, so that you can see if that works. All right.
Hi, so when I was doing the graph section for the bouncing ball part, when making the graphs a bit sharper, when watching the tutorial, it said to like click and drag this while holding control. And when I tried like before, like holding control and then click and drag, it doesn't really work. And when I try like click and then hold control and then drag, it still isn't really working. So I was wondering if maybe the command changed or if there's something I'm not doing right here.
Let me see. It should still be the same. Perfect. Let me try this one. Control. No, yeah, control should work to break that. Let me see here. That one doesn't really count. Let's try. Let me do this one. Let's duplicate that. And just hit F9. This isn't going to do anything great, but let's see. It looks weird. But if yeah, no, it should be control. Hold down control and you click on the little bevel handle and then it should work for you. I'm not sure what's happening. I would maybe try and close the program and do it again. A couple things I do notice though on your curves. We have some issues happening here. Specifically in this spot, you have an extra keyframe. And here you want this curve to be nice and smooth all the way down. And then a quick bounce all the way up. I know you're having trouble with getting the control to work, so unless if you are on a Mac, that would be different, but I don't think you are. It looks like you're on a Windows. So try that again and let me know if it doesn't work for some reason. We'll try and figure something out. Because it should work. But are your keyframes, let me see, do you ever go into the dope sheet? If you go into the dope sheet view, right? If you click off that and we see the little keyframes, make sure that they're eased, right? Because if you haven't gone in there and hit F9, um, that might be your issue too. You can also click on the bottom. There is like a little curve thing right over here that says to ease them. Click on those and then try doing that. That might be your issue. Let me delete this rectangle real quick so I don't have that saved. All right, let's close that. Lazaro.
Hello. I had a simple question. Is there a way where you can save all the effects that you use on the left hand of the screen of the window? Is there a way where you can save it as like your own preset, or do you have to continue to copy and paste it onto other like objects or compositions? Is there a way where you can save all the effects that you use on the left hand of the screen of the window? Is there a way where you can save it as like your own preset, or do you have to continue to copy and paste it onto other like objects or compositions?
I guess I've never really tried to do that. That's a really great question. If you can save these effects as like a group, that would be something I would have to also look into to see if that's effects and presets. I think it would be. You can go into here and add customs, right? So like if I were to bring this panel up, there's animation presets. I think there's a spot where, let's type in custom. Let's see this. I know there's like a custom text one that you can do. Let me look into that for you, Lazaro, and then try and figure out what we could do for that, because I think you can. Let's see. There you go. Save animation preset. So you click on the little hamburger menu right there, and I believe you can do it that way, managing your effects. No, don't go do that because you would disable a bunch of stuff. But if you go into your effects and presets here, and you go to the little hamburger menu up there, you can save the animation preset possibly. Let me look into that for you. But that's a good idea. I mean, makes your work quicker, right? And then finally, we have Paige.
Hello. For this week, I didn't have too many questions other than like, is there a difference between the VMO and YouTube settings? I'm just wondering because, like last week, oh man, for example, like this, my Sabria realm as well as the other realm, they rendered out like much faster than my 3D typography. It took like over an hour to render. And when I was saying too, the bit depth isn't different, but it was because I know I had to change the dimensions, but I think I had, for the 3D typography, I rendered it out using the YouTube settings for HD, and for the room,
Were you
I
saying
had
that in
between the VMO and YouTube settings, just week. Oh man. For example, like this, my
Yeah, I guess
Sabria
maybe
realm.
it would have to do with the way that it encodes it for each program. I was wondering if it was something that you were having an issue inside of Cinema 4D, but just use whichever one works best for you then, I guess. Because sometimes if you're in Cinema 4D and you're using a different render or and like a rendering engine, each rendering engine can take different times because of how they're rendering objects out. Like the viewport renderer is the fastest one because it doesn't account for necessarily all of the certain types of materials and reflections and transparencies and all that kind of stuff. Whereas like the redshift renderer inside of Cinema 4D would take, that accounts for physics and materials and everything like that differently. And so, if you're exporting things, if you're having the issue with the time inside of Cinema 4D specifically, then it will have to do with what type of render engine you're using. If you're having issues while encoding it inside of After Effects, right? Like whether you're using the YouTube or the Vimeo one, just use whatever one's faster for you. That's not that big of a deal. But as long as it's 1920 by 1080 and it is 24 frames a second, that's what I'm more concerned about. So, all right, guys, good questions this week. Interesting. We're getting more complex with stuff, so I like it. Let me know if you have any more questions. Edward, I'm going to look into that. David, I'm going to send you that on Slack for the thing about the materials. And then also, Lazaro, I am going to look into seeing if we can save those presets for you. All right, you guys, I will talk to you later. Bye.